Right, so Benjamin Netanyahu ought to be bricking it right now, as we've just borne witness to something perhaps none of us expected to ever see happen, and that is the enforcement of an international criminal court arrest warrant, and one issued for one of Netanyahu's mates at that. There are hardline national leaders in this world, you see, and there are those who use such strong-arm tactics that even amongst some of the worst you might care to think about in power now, Rodrigo Duterte, the former president of the Philippines, stood apart. A brutal thug, now hopefully heading exactly where he belongs. Therefore, the arrest of Duterte under an ICC arrest warrant marks a monumental moment in the pursuit of international justice. Duterte, who had become infamous for his brutal war on drugs, was apprehended and is now en route to The Hague to face charges of crimes against humanity. This development has sent, as you might imagine, shockwaves across the globe. It shouldn't really, though. This is what the ICC is there for. But particularly in Israel, and to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who also faces an ICC arrest warrant in relation to war crimes in Gaza. The arrest of Duterte underscores the principle that no one, not even a head of state, is above the law, and that includes Netanyahu and anyone else with an arrest warrant over their heads right now. But perhaps Netanyahu ought to have more reason to worry than most, especially when you consider how Duterte was apprehended at that. Right, so Rodrigo Duterte, the foul-mouthed former president of the Philippines, served as president from 2016 to 2022 and gained notoriety for his authoritarian style and his brutal policies. His war on drugs launched shortly after he took office, and this was a nationwide campaign aimed at eradicating illegal drug use and trafficking. However, the campaign was totally marred by widespread human rights abuses, including extrajudicial killings, torture, and arbitrary arrests. When he meant war, he literally meant war. And if those alleged criminals were gunned down, that was just as good an end result for him as locking them up, it seems. According to police, some 6,200 people were killed during Duterte's anti-drug operations. But those are the official figures, and the real figure is widely suspected to be a lot higher. Another figure offered by Al Jazeera, for example, covers Duterte's time as mayor of Davao. He was mayor there for over 20 years. And subsequently as Filipino president, is that the figure could be as high as 30,000. The ICC launched an investigation into Duterte's drug war in 2018, following complaints from human rights groups and victims' families. This stopped in 2021 when Duterte pulled the Philippines out of the ICC. Now there's a surefire way to demonstrate his innocence, isn't there? But this was then reinstated in 2023 and the investigation continued. It doesn't appear to have been announced exactly when the arrest warrant was issued for Duterte, but one has certainly been issued against him, accusing him of crimes against humanity for his role in these extrajudicial killings. The ICC's decision to pursue Duterte was based on evidence that the killings were systematic and widespread, constituting direct attacks on civilians. Duterte's arrest is a significant step towards accountability for these atrocities, therefore, demonstrating the very important but often doubted fact that nobody is actually above the law. Duterte's war on drugs was characterised by its brutality and its disregard for human rights. He openly encouraged police and civilians to kill suspected drug users and dealers, famously stating, "If you know of any addicts, go ahead and kill them yourself, as getting their parents to do it would be too painful." This rhetoric created a culture of impunity, where law enforcement and vigilantes felt empowered to carry out extrajudicial executions without fear of consequence. The campaign disproportionately targeted poor communities, with many victims having no links to the drug trade at all, and the majority of those killed were low-level drug users or petty criminals, not the high-level drug lords that Duterte claimed to be targeting. The ICC's investigation found that the killings were not isolated incidents, but part of a coordinated campaign orchestrated by his government. And this systematic violence led to the ICC's conclusion that Duterte and his administration were responsible for crimes against humanity. The arrest of Duterte has significant implications for somebody else, though, namely Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who also, as we well know, faces an ICC arrest warrant over war crimes in Gaza. The ICC's investigation into Netanyahu focused on Israel's military actions in Gaza, as we know, including the bombing of civilian infrastructure and the use of disproportionate force, a genocide. Like Duterte, Netanyahu has dismissed the ICC's authority, though, claiming that the court is biased and has no jurisdiction over Israel. They're anti-Semitic, an argument that has been well and truly put to bed, though. However, Duterte's arrest demonstrates that the ICC is willing to pursue high-profile leaders even in the face of political resistance. For anyone who doubted the ICC's credibility and preparedness to action any of these warrants it has issued, this should also be put to bed now. The parallels between both Duterte and Netanyahu echo each other rather well too. Both are accused of systematic human rights abuses, both have dismissed the ICC's authority, and both have relied on nationalistic rhetoric to justify their actions. Duterte's arrest sends a clear message to Netanyahu, amongst others of course, but particularly to him, I think, that the law can and will come for him. Duterte and Netanyahu's relationship was characterised by mutual admiration and a shared disregard for human rights, as it happens, as well. During Duterte's presidency, the Philippines and Israel enjoyed close diplomatic ties, with Duterte praising Netanyahu's leadership and Israel providing military equipment to the Philippines. Duterte's authoritarian style and tough-on-crime rhetoric resonated with Netanyahu and some media, especially the pro-Zionist outlets of Israel, who saw the two of them as kindred spirits. Says a lot, doesn't it? However, this relationship also highlights the hypocrisy of both leaders too. While they publicly supported each other, their actions at home revealed a blatant disregard for human rights and international law. Duterte's war on drugs and Netanyahu's actions in Gaza, as an example, are two sides of the same coin. Both leaders have used violence and repression to maintain power at the expense of innocent lives. That same coin can flip on Netanyahu, though, as it seems to have done on Duterte. Enforcing ICC arrest warrants is notoriously difficult, as the court relies on member states to apprehend suspects. This has led to a catch-me-if-you-can dynamic with them, where leaders accused of crimes can evade justice by remaining in non-member states or using their political influence to avoid extradition. And obviously, as we've seen with Netanyahu, Israel's pervasive political influence in several governments have led them to say they wouldn't apprehend him if he happened to visit them, violating the statutes they are signed up to on such matters. Duterte's arrest, therefore, is a rare exception to this rule, demonstrating that the ICC can succeed in bringing high-profile suspects to justice. But it is how it happened to Duterte that should bother Netanyahu most of all, as Amnesty International explain. On the 11th of March, upon his return to Manila from Hong Kong, former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte was arrested by police on the basis of an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court against him for crimes against humanity in relation to the war on drugs. The ICC has yet to confirm that an arrest warrant has been issued against Duterte, although Philippine media has shared photos of the arrest warrant. The ICC has been carrying out investigations into possible crimes against humanity, including murders committed in the context of the deadly war on drugs under the administration of President Duterte, and also those in Davao City by the alleged Davao Death Squad while he was mayor of Davao from 2011 to 2016. Duterte had been mayor of Davao for 20 years, though his death squad's only operated for the last 5 years of that term there. The point is, though, that Duterte was turned in by his own country. Out of power, he was sent packing, and that's a fate Netanyahu will seek to avoid at all costs. It should put into perspective why maintaining power above hostage negotiations and any form of ceasefire or peace is more important to him than anything else. Because out of power, he's as vulnerable even in Israel as Duterte has proven to be in the Philippines. Netanyahu has every reason to be nervous following Duterte's arrest. Like Duterte, he faces serious allegations of crimes against humanity, a long list of them. Netanyahu's dismissal of the ICC's authority may no longer be enough to protect him, or certainly won't protect him forever, especially as international pressure mounts over Israel's actions in Gaza and beyond. Moreover, Duterte's arrest has galvanized calls for Netanyahu's arrest. The arrest of Duterte has set a precedent that could pave the way for Netanyahu's prosecution, as more demands for it come to light in light of Duterte's detention. So the arrest of Rodrigo Duterte is a landmark moment in the pursuit of international justice, demonstrating that even former heads of state can be held accountable for their crimes. But it also serves as a warning to Benjamin Netanyahu and indeed other leaders accused of human rights abuses who have ICC arrest warrants out for them, that the law can and will come for them. The challenges of enforcing ICC arrest warrants remain a massive issue. But Duterte's arrest is a reminder that justice is possible, even in the face of political resistance, and that the law can come for the powerful. It is possible. Meanwhile, if I digress from one part of the Hague to another, from the ICC to the ICJ, an all-new genocide case has come before that court, but one with significant echoes of Israel and Gaza again as well, very reminiscent of South Africa's case against Israel, in fact. and is certainly no less important either, yet I guarantee you know far less about this one. Get all the details of this story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch, therefore. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new content while supporting the channel at the same time. All new content dropping daily. Very much appreciated as that is, holding power to account for ordinary working class people. And I will hopefully catch you on the next video. Cheers, folks.